Hey everybody, sorry running a little late today, trying to make it all work here, but we're continuing with day drinking. Another fun lineup, weird random stuff I picked up, been wanting to taste. I'm going to start the day with some brandy, move on to a bit of whiskey, a couple different styles. Boo, Astros. Wow. Go Astros. Dang. Anyway, go Dodgers, obviously. Leader, welcome. How are ya? Good to see ya. So we're gonna jump right in. First two things, really exciting. New brandies, Armagnac to be specific. These are not like per se K&L exclusives, although I did buy the last of it. This is for sure not a K&L exclusive. This is the special blend done for Trou Normand and Bar Agricole for their cocktail selections that isn't moving so much right now for obvious reasons. So Charles was able to slough us off a little bit. Coming from an awesome producer in Lalande. So this is sort of the western part of Baz Armagnac. He's a really interesting guy. I've been to the domain a couple of times. Jacques Lasserre. He was an itinerant distiller for many, many years, working for one of the big, there are three really in the region, two or three main ones. And so he's really a specialist of the still, and had this, I guess, family property and sort of took over, but also very much in the vines. He does a lot with Folle Blanche, which is the grape varietal here. This is the sort of least planted varietal in Armagnac, and rightfully so. It's extremely difficult to cultivate, but it does produce spirits of very, very high quality when done well, and actually works for wine as well. The style here, it is non-vintage, although we know this is all from the 2010 vintage. I think the boys at Bar Agricole really wanted something that highlighted the character of Folle Blanche, the spirit itself. And the result is this, which is not your super dark oaky in your face style. So not a lot of new oak. I'm sure there was a little bit, and extremely affordable for the quality. You can see almost the viscosity. There's lots of texture. It's all about It's all about the varietal here. The nose is filled with really fresh stone fruits. We're talking lots of apricots, a little nuttiness, but more, not the roasted nut, more like almond skins and fresh green walnuts. It's a really pretty spirit. Folle Blanche sort of has a following in the geek circles, partly because it's so rare, but also it makes a very, very fine spirit. After phylloxera, it was pretty much discontinued. It's extremely susceptible to a number of ailments, and therefore a very risky thing to plant in Armagnac or any capacity, to be perfectly honest. But if you're willing to do the work in the vineyards, you see the results here. Armagnac's a really complicated place, and they replaced a lot of the vines for brandy production after the crisis with a non-vinous vinifera varietal called Bacco. And Bacco is extremely hardy. It's great for making brandy, but it is legally prohibited from being included in wine production. So for a long time, there was a push in Armagnac to sort of make that varietal illegal or what have you. And ultimately it was decided, okay, it's got historical significance. It's been there for many, many, many decades. And now people are into it, which is cool. But a lot of these producers, they need grapes that they can produce wine with. Less so in the Baz Armagnac, more toward Tenerez, where wine production is a little bit more typical, but they're still good producers of wine. You know, Tariquet, the big producer, really the first to do quality Côte de Gascogne outside of France. Still exquisitely affordable. I mean, these wines are $8-9 a bottle for the end consumer, which is incredible. Interestingly, the oak is still there, still part of the picture. Get some good vanilla, get some good texture. You're got some spice for sure. You're not just on the fruit aromas. It's quite a contrast to the extremely light Pellet Eau Age de Glace that we sell for, $28, which is super fun, but it doesn't have the character and the intensity of flavor. Yeah, that's very, very tasty. We're very happy to have that, and sad that you can't have it at True Normand, where it's meant to be had. Of course, looks like Bar Agricole is opening a new restaurant, which we're very excited to hear. They're still moving forward with that. I think they saw it was like spring of next year, which hopefully we'll all be back out and drinking in the bars by then. Let's pray. Now moving on to one of my favorite producers, Domaine de Barillon. The family here is Claverie. These are some of the most incredible producers of Armagnac. They're in this little gem of a village called La Rassemble. It's right in the heart of the best part of the Bas Armagnac. Technically, it's just in Lalande, I believe, but just on the border with the Gers. And this area has a lot of good producers, but it's not kind of got the maybe the name recognition that a village like La Freche or La Bastide may have. But the Claverie family, it's actually a father-daughter team who run the operation. It's one of the most endearing appointments. We love being there because you show up and you're on a proper farm. They're doing it all. They have sunflowers, and they'll cultivate some wood, like forests for paper and stuff like that, and then ducks and chickens and the whole thing. And then on the hill behind, there's it's 7 hectares. It's not very big. Not adjacent to the property, there's a beautiful sort of perfect exposure for Folle Blanche there, which is, it's really key for this grape variety because it's very susceptible to rot, that you have good exposure, good sunlight, because otherwise, you're gonna lose a lot of fruit. So here, another Folle Blanche. They don't do exclusively Folle Blanche by any means. Uni Blanc is typical. I think there's definitely some Baco. I didn't see a lot of wine production there, so I think they probably have a decent amount of Baco because of that. I know they do, a Flock and a couple other things. I think they do make a little bit of wine. I think they also purchased their own still, an old Alambic style column. I forget when exactly. I think in the 90s, if I remember correctly. That might be a guess. I might be wrong. Some of the Brandy geek will surely correct me in the comments. It's pretty special stuff. They're very old school. They aerate. The production practice for Armagnac is similar to cognac, although there are some distinct differences. And for a small producer like this, they're not doing the typical brandy élevage things really regularly. So maybe they'll aerate their brandies, which is a process designed to soften the esters, which is a very powerful aromatic component of the distillate, and they'll do that maybe every 2 years or something like that, maybe once a year, and then they'll do Eulage every 2 or 3 years, whereas in cognac you might do it 4 times a year. So that's one big distinction between them. And they're also, they're buying some new oak. They don't have enough capital to necessarily buy 100% new oak, but they'll move the brandies around when they're quite young to take up the color and the flavor, and then move them to old barrels, which is typical. And then Eulage, which is the process of topping up a vintage, usually blending the single vintage together. They'll do that, maybe two or every other year or every 3 years. And those things are done for various regions. Some say for flavor, others, the real reason is because as evaporation accelerates, it compounds. So the more air in the barrels, the more evaporation occurs. And so you have a sort of a legal limit that you're allowed to lose for tax purposes in France over the course of the life of a brandy, and if you exceed that, then you owe taxes on brandy that you don't actually get to sell. So there are some complications there. So anyway, this is a very classic. Now, this is the 2002 vintage. It was bottled in 2018, so it's been in the warehouse for a couple of years. So 16 years. Really nice place for Armagnac. 15 to 20 years for Baz Armagnac is a really good place. Tenerez, often with a harder spirit, you're going to need a little bit more to get this kind of finesse, but you never have the power here in Baz Armagnac, which is the key. The nose is, wow, lots of sort of stewed fruits, old, exotic wood, cigar box, old, beautiful, like varnishy, mahogany, those sorts of flavors. Some spice, but it's not peppery by any means. Very textured, cinnamon, a little bit of licorice, good length, some nuttiness, but it's not full rancio, over the top funk, which you sometimes get on even their older stuff. A lot of freshness here. I think that's partly the Folie Blanche, partly the state of maturation on this. These are fabulous brandies. I think quality-wise, very few out there better. I really put these guys up in the top 5 or 10 producers, and they're super under the radar. It doesn't have any of the, they're a true farm producer. They don't have any of the sort of upcharge you get with some of the more aristocratic. Well, let me plug in here. Is it going to work for me? Anyway, we'll figure it out. So delicious stuff. We took 5 or 8 cases that were left in the warehouse at Charles. It's not a K&L exclusive, not one I picked out, but one we just loved and had to buy. And so highly recommend these if you're looking for a good brandy for after dinner or just to drink in place of, old bourbon, which we can't get anymore. This is a nice sub for bourbon because it doesn't have the overt sweetness. Bourbon's sweet, of course, but sometimes with some of the more worked brandies, they are adding sugar, and that's not the case here. They do work with the Unilog to do some of their blends, and we try not to mess with those too much. If we do an order with them, and I'm sure Charles, he'll say, please, no additives. There's no color added, I don't believe, to these. That would be unusual for them. On their blends, when you see a 10-year-old blend that's darker than the 16-year-old, then you got to ask yourself what's going on there. I think that's like $80 or $90. I think it's a pretty fabulous deal. Claverie, one wonderful thing, every time we're there, they are talking about what do we want? What does our market want? Which is really interesting. It's not the most commercial operation, but they're really, really concerned with what we're looking for. We're always want the bigger. We don't always. I love beautiful, elegant, fresh, younger Armagnacs, but the market definitely wants that sort of replacement for new oak American whiskeys, which Armagnac is one of the few dark spirits that sort of scratches that itch. And they always like serve like a rabbit pate or something like that. And it's just fabulous, this fabulous experience. You sit there for an hour and they have every vintage going back. And these guys have a lot of old vintages. We're talking back into the 1800s. We brought an 1897 in a few years ago, which was very unusual. 6 bottles or something like that. It was really pretty fun. So that's the brandy for the day. Nice quick little brandy treat. And we're gonna move on to interlude, something pretty special here. This is a great little distillery, extremely sought after product. We're talking single malt Scotch from the Daft Mill Distillery. Francis Cuthbert and his brother, whose name is escaping me right now, started this distillery in 2005, 4, 2, I don't know. Pretty long time ago, and they're barley farmers, and that's how they make their business. And Francis is an extremely meticulous distiller. He is like right in there. When I visited, he was literally running the entire distillery by himself. It's an incredible operation, really built from the ground up. And Francis, he's extremely meticulous. He is the most self-critical distiller I've ever met. We went through the distillery. He was sort of, already on year 10 of his operation. Sorry, I'm letting my dog out. He wants to go outside. And so, go ahead. We tasted through a number of casks together, and he's just, everyone we tasted, I was like, wow, tastes pretty good. And, his inevitable response, well, not quite ready yet. Not ready. So, these are finally ready. This is summer batch release, 12 years old, so bottled in 2019. These are small batch releases. They're not inexpensive. They are very collectible. This is 7 first fill bourbon barrels. They have the cask numbers 67, 68, 69, 70, 1, 2, 3. And that's it. At the end of the summer season. So what's really interesting about Francis, and he really is a wealth of knowledge. He's also a barley farmer, so he has a lot of experience in that realm. He does a lot of, this is referred to as single farm estate, which I think is really interesting. He, of course, produces a huge amount of barley, but not that much. And, he made a point of saying, we try to use as much of our own barley, but it's really hard to say what we're getting back from a maltster. The batches that they do are so large that, there's no way for him with the relatively small operation he has compared to sort of agro-industrial style production to guarantee that every kernel that comes back is his own. I think he was, pretty upfront about that. They still nonetheless bottle as single estate, which, I'm fine with. Let's have a taste. It's a big jump to single malt here. Lot going on. Lots of yellow fruit, flowers, honeysuckle. Some citrus, but it's not like really sharp on that side. Bit of tropical quality to it. Maybe guava or papaya. I'm like not a huge papaya fan, but I like the aromatic of papaya. That's not the worst for me. Very fun stuff. This is bottled at 46% alcohol, and I think it's 1,600 bottles, $250 a bottle. So these are very collectible, apparently. I think they're sold out in Europe already. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of that, I mean, it's very barley centric, has some great sort of biscuity, like sweet biscuits, a little bit of honey on them. It says distilled, matured, bottled in Fife. Oh, grown, distilled, bottled in Fife. Maybe he is able to say that is 100% his own barley. I'm not sure Francis would lie about something like that. The interesting thing is no mention of whether this has been colored, but I assume not with a color like that. I mean, they're certainly not hiding anything there. First fill bourbon barrel is not gonna make too much of a dent on the color after 12 years. It's very, very pretty. These are expensive, of course, and they're very, very delicious. Collectors mostly want them because they are these sort of limited pre-official sale. You know, eventually there'll be a proper, I imagine there will be a proper 10 or 12-year-old as production increases and availability should as well. But also, you know, they're doing a lot of stuff by hand that, you know, many of the more efficient distillers wouldn't. So it's more expensive to make than a typical single malt. Well, it's got a lot going on. Adding a drop of water really helps the potency. It gets bigger, which is so interesting. I always think about single malt. You know, you often think, oh, you're gonna add water, you're gonna dilute it, but it's not the case here. Here you're opening it up, more richness, more texture, more aromatic action, more flavor. So this loves a little drop of water. Ooh, yeah, I'm not gonna argue with that too much. Very, very tasty. We've got the last little bit of this, and I think the distributor just opened up last 50 or 40 or 50 bottles. So if you haven't got yours already, don't wait too much longer on these. They're pretty tasty. Now moving on to American whiskey. We're gonna do 2 ryes, very, very different. Actually, we're gonna do 3 ryes, but I'm gonna start with 2 ryes, very different styles. The first is a little craft rye, Treasure Island distilled. This is a 4-year-old, so not very old. Single barrel, bottled at 110 proof. It's kind of a special edition that our friends at Bender and Cohen, they started off buying pretty high quality Canadian rye, bottling it and blending it, and selling it for pretty affordable. They had a 7-year that was pretty solid for $30-40, and at the same time they were contract distilling with a distillery on Treasure Island in San Francisco, and putting these into really high quality wood. The other thing about this, which is really unusual, is this is basically aged outdoors. So they have sort of some parts of the warehouse that are essentially exposed to the elements, and so you get all of that ocean air coming through. I mean, you know, San Francisco is not a very warm place, but you do have a lot of interaction there, and we bought a nice little chunk of this barrel. This is a 5-char Hofmeister American oak barrel. Is the Cooper there. Let's have a taste. Wow, this is a change up from the old single malt, kind of going a whole different direction here. Yeah, okay, I remember this now. This has that sort of orangey rye thing, that orange spiced, almost like cloves on a burnt orange peel. Doesn't have that young, small barrel thing. This is not small barrels. I think these are 53 gallon. A little bit of like flambéed banana. Big clovey notes here. Yeah, dark spices, hints of black pepper. That's the Bender and Cohen single barrel. I guess they call it double barrel rye. I don't remember why that was. Double barrel rye whiskey. I forget what they did with this. Something goofy. So that's pretty interesting. Good little craft local rye. One of the, the interesting sort of contract distiller brands. And they're doing some interesting stuff, particularly that aging on the outside of the distillery. I think it's an open container style warehouse. Next, we're moving on to a pretty fun, famous little whiskey. This is, I can't believe we still have this in stock, or that Jim Beam had it in stock. This is the limited release 2018 Cask Strength Knob Creek. You see Fred's beautiful little mug there on the front. He is selected this batch. It was barreled in 2009, bottled in 2018. And this one, this was Whiskey Advocate #2 whiskey in 2018. So I don't know why it's still here 2 years later. I mean, we sold out of every other top 20 Whiskey Advocate whiskey that has ever existed. But, and of course, they keep producing new batches, but specific batches to those awards typically sell out quite quickly. And I guess they made a decent amount of this, and I think we have it on the website for $60. 119.6 proof, nice little cask strength whiskey, aged entirely in Warehouse A. I don't remember I don't think Beam publishes the mash bill on these. Beam Rye is like sort of, I think, underrated in a lot of cases. Of course, you had the the Booker's Rye, which was extremely popular, and a number of other limited editions like this one that were, but their entry level stuff. They have that great green label Prohibition, which is very affordable. Nice high proof 4-year-old rye for nothing, and it sort of gets forgotten behind your other classic bar staples, Rittenhouse, Sazerac, and those guys. But they age a little longer, put it in the barrel, and it wins a big fat award. So let's have a smell. Pretty big departure from the Bender and Cohen here. More of that exotic spice now. It's got a really nice character on the nose. This is a very classic Kentucky rye flavor profile. Doesn't burn too much at all, even though sometimes I like a good burny rye, but it's pretty soft and round. Ooh, yes. Yeah, that's solid. It has those green flavors, that great green mature rye flavor, a little bit of pine, definitely some some good fruit behind that as well. Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't believe it's still around. I mean, it's $60. It's not cheap, but for award-winning rye from 2 years ago, it's kind of shocking. We sold quite a bit of it. I took a pretty big position when it popped up 2-3 months ago, and I think maybe the old pandemic kind of got people looking in the other direction, and we swooped in and snagged about 50 cases. Wow, see that? That was not fun. So that's got that, definitely that exotic bark, almost a little bit into the like bitter herbs. Sorry, I'm just tasting the Knob Creek limited edition 2018 release, which won the Whiskey Advocate #2 of the year. Same batch. This isn't like the recreation that was also available, although we don't have it right now. Before that, it was the Bender and Cohen. This is a small craft rye. They call it Double Barrel. That was pretty tasty, and that was only 2 years old. Oh wow, look at that. Milling, mashing all the rye on island. And before that, the Daft Mill. If you want to go back, this will be up on the IG. The Daft Mill 2006 summer release. Very rare expression of this fabulous new distiller, but very old school distiller. And before that, a couple brandies, doing the whole odds and ends. End of July, getting into August. August, we're gonna have a lot of interviews. So with that in mind, I did have to mention something that happened on this Instagram live a few weeks ago. I opened a bottle of the excellent Buffalo Trace Kosher, and without looking properly at the label, a number of you mentioned that I had actually snagged the rye recipe, not the straight rye. So here it is. Yeah, I have a new Knob Creek pick coming. Of course, we're not able to pick from most distilleries ourselves. Sorry, someone just asked, the people who watch this later won't be able to see the comments, which is the silliest thing about Instagram Live TV. Just keep those comments up there. Expecting any more Knob Creek picks coming your way. I have one coming next week. It was not a true pick like many of the other distilleries. We were not able to get samples. So they say, hey, Fred will pick one for you. So this one's on Fred. If you don't like it, send them an email. It's not as old as the ones we've had in the past, but they've assured me it's spectacularly good. It is 9-10 years old, so back to that old thing. So we'll see if people take to it. I mean, we sell out the 15-year-olds in 5 minutes, but now moving on to the old or the new stocks. Hopefully in the future we'll get access to some older stuff again, but Knob can still be delicious even at that younger age. So anyway, I opened the wrong bottle live on air, and now that we're doing a flight of little ryes, I thought I'm gonna open the right one and see how it tastes. Of course, these are unfortunately not available any longer, but I had the bottle, thought I'd see how it goes. Same recipe that's going into the the classics, Sazerac Rye, 6-year-old. Very different character from the Jim Beam here. There is a little bit of that oranginess again, which is typical. Very floral almost here, which is interesting. I don't remember Sazerac being quite like that. It's a bit older than Sazerac, and of course a smaller batch. The family who owns the Sazerac company sold these barrels to CEO Mark Brown, and he kept on to them because that whole kosher thing is complicated. Mr. Brett Colombo had Weller Full Proof and Old Charter in my cart this week to get an error message. Website's giving me a stroke. Me too, buddy. Me too. I don't know what to say. The website's it's very, very busy. So, you know, when those things come in, there's 7,000 people all clicking at the same time, and it's a terrible situation, but it's we don't have another option. The stores aren't open. So, I mean, that's always been our way. We put everything online. There will be that single barrel, so there'll be more of that. So if you're paying attention, the people who are on it should get that. And we've instated it, at least in the time being, a little bit more stringent policy for the allocations, which didn't specifically prohibit people in the same household from ordering more than one. So, you know, if you're a husband and wife team hitting the website, unfortunately, that's not going to work any longer. But that should spread things out a little bit. I think, you know, we want people to drink these, and, you know, these rare bourbons, obviously, you know, if you're buying multiples, you know, that's definitely not in the spirit of our operation, which is, you know, why we're not jacking the price up. You all know the reason it's so hard to get rare bourbon from K&L, despite us getting pretty good allocations, is because, you know, we're the last guys to openly sell them at you know, reasonable prices that I found. I mean, you know, if I walk into a store and see Weller Full Proof for $40-$50, I'm gonna buy it, even though I can get it less, because that's just ridiculous. So there's nobody doing that. So yeah, do apologize, Brett. You know how it goes, but hopefully that single barrel will come through next week, and the people who are really onto it will jump in there. Oh, this smells great, though. This is the Buffalo Trace Kosher Rye, straight rye. The proper one, the one I meant to open 2 weeks ago for y'all. And it smells pretty good. Flavor-wise, we get a lot of that sort of peppery rye thing. Way less of the piney stuff that you get on the Jim Beam. It's a pretty wild little product. It's a bummer there's so little of it. You know, there isn't a lot of rye coming out of Buffalo Trace in general. For a long time, the Sazerac was super allocated, and now that's more available. But you know, we don't really see like the plethora of new releases coming through. I hate spitting that out, but I have to say semi-coherent. Any recommendations for Wilderness Trail, asks Richard. Yeah, drink all of it. It's awesome. Love Wilderness Trail. We have a single barrel K&L exclusive, selected by my man of NorCal, Andrew Whiteley. It's very delicious. It's a rye recipe. I actually like their rye recipe at this age right now a lot. The wheated is sought after because everybody's into wheated whiskeys, but yeah, Bahan knows. Wilderness Trail is, you know, they're a really, really interesting company, and, you know, when Drew Colsfiend's like, this is the one to watch, you know, that's going to be the real deal stuff. They own a yeast company, and they provide yeast for big and small distilleries alike, and they're just super knowledgeable, and they're doing things a little bit different, which is interesting. You know, they've changed up the fermentation process. It's all sweet mash whiskey, which is unusual, something that is, you know, for a normal distiller, you know, not sacrilege, but is something that would take a lot more effort than is worth. But because they're experts in that fermentation side, and they really know their yeast strains, they're able to crank out really consistent whiskeys, even using the sweet mash. And they've helped set up a couple of processes that have been very well received. I think, you know, who they advised was like the Peerless system was also a sweet mash, which is, you know, obviously won some awards, and you know, they're able to crank out, you know, cask strength stuff at that, you know, $100+ range, 3-4 year old stuff. And Wilderness Trail is doing similar quality things for half the price in a lot of cases. No offense, Peerless, you know, you guys are killing it. No question about that. Yeah, that's, yeah, thumbs up. you ever get to Danville, stop by. They got a great little tour. It's a cool little distillery, producing a lot. They've increased their capacities pretty significantly over the last couple of years. They just doubled capacity, or maybe more than that. So they're jamming, and they're gonna be selling lots of juice to different brands, I assume, as well, which is kind of cool. So there'll be some great craft Wilderness Trail and under a lot of different labels. Any other questions? Chieftains Benriach versus a Thrusk 25 years, similar prices but can't choose. Wow. Well, they're very, very different products. The Benriach finished for 3+ years in what I believe is agricole rum. It's an odd ball for sure. It's more nuanced and restrained. The Thrusk is very classic, Speyside. The price on the Thrusk is really hard to argue with. That was almost like a glitch in our system. So that you might want to take advantage of that. The Benriach has been marked down. I can't believe we didn't sell the whole thing. $150 for a single barrel rum cask. But it's not maybe the sexiest thing on paper. It's pretty tasty stuff. Be hard to choose. If you want something unusual and on the lighter side, then probably go for the Benriach. If you want something more classic, go for that Thrusk. And it's gonna be hard to beat that Thrusk for if you're really looking typical Speysider. That's silly deal. That should be $150-$60, but it's $93.99. So voila. Can't go too wrong on either though. No Willet picks this year. Sorry. I'm trying, but yeah, it's not happening. So sorry, Brett. Hopefully, what we are getting is one of the goofiest, funnest brands that like collectors love, even though it's like not at all special. Four Roses picks are coming. Whiskey Two Fingers asks here if we're getting Four Roses picks. They're bottling 2 in July, 2 in August, and 1 in September. Our 5 barrels for the year. Get the Glen Grant. I'm a Glen Grant. Read my notes on them. If you want something pretty and fresh, Richard asked about the Moonrose Glen Grant versus the Glen Keith. I think the Keith has a lot of complexity to it, but it's got a little bit more of that herbal side. The Glen Grant is just really, really pretty. So if you're looking for that, fruity floral, go for the Glen Grant. So sorry, I was talking about the Four Roses picks. Those guys are coming. Should be any day now. This unfortunately is going to be some of the most sought after we ever have. Our great friends at Four Roses yanked, which it's the first time in 5 years, but they snagged a 12.5-year-old single barrel for us. So I forget the recipe. I think it's OESF maybe. And it's just not only is it old, it's like an exceptional batch. So yeah, those will be really, unfortunately, limited. Do keep an eye out for that. I expect that to happen in the next 2-3 weeks max, and then they'll continue to come through until middle of fall. Yeah. And the whole everything they send us is fun to drink. But that'll be one to jump on when you see it. That's all I got today, guys. Any other questions before I jet off here? Good to see everybody. Lots of great drinking to do. Don't forget about these for the summer, the Miquets. We don't have a ton of it. Awesome little brandy, should not be ignored. The Barillon is obvious. I'm not even gonna. I don't really need help selling that, but it's stellar stuff. And yeah, that's it. Oh, we got some questions. Richard, you missed quite a bit, but this will be up on the IG live in like 3 minutes when I'm done. So I'll go run down the whole list. It was the 2 brandies, Charles Neal selection, some warehouse finds, not K&L exclusives. The Daft Mill was fabulous, the summer release. We'll be releasing an email on that coming through soon. 2 rye whiskeys, very opposite styles. Young Bender and Cohen from San Francisco, distilled on Treasure Island, and the number 2 whiskey from of the year 2018 from Whiskey Advocate. I tasted through. I think you'll dig all that. And then a little special guest star, the actual kosher rye that I was supposed to just taste 2 weeks ago. So it was good hanging with everybody. Enjoy, take her easy. We'll see you next week. Got a lot of fun stuff coming up. All right, be well, everybody.